60 people, one roof, 5 months of winter, no metal, no glass, no chimney, no insulation of any kind that we would recognize today. Outside, the temperature fell to 40 below, rivers froze solid, and the forest went silent under the weight of the snow. And the strangest part of all is this: the fire that kept those 60 people alive was never allowed to leave the building. Think about your own home for a moment. It has insulation they could never have dreamed of, sealed windows, a furnace that answers to a switch on the wall. Theirs had something yours does not, and by the end of this story, I think you will feel the absence of it. Because every builder in recorded history has fought the same battle: get the smoke out, push it up, drive it away before it fills the lungs of the people you love. The Haudenosaunee built a house that asked the smoke to stay. To understand why, you have to spend one winter inside it. So picture a boy of 12 winters, given the night watch over the fire for the very first time, wrapped in bear fur, listening to the wood settle. He looks up. 3 meters above his head hangs a slow grey layer of smoke that never rises any further, and floating inside it, braids of corn, turning gently in the heat. He asks his grandmother why they let the smoke stay. She does not answer him. She only says, "Ask me again in the spring." By the end of this, you will understand why some architects today are quietly studying a house built without a single nail. Long before Europeans ever saw these forests, the cold woodlands of what we now call New York, Ontario, Quebec, and Pennsylvania belonged to the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. That name was never just an address. It described an entire civilization, because the building and the society were the same idea wearing 2 different shapes. Every winter tested the limit of what human beings could survive. Snow buried the trails, rivers locked solid, hunting became a gamble, and every single armload of firewood meant another walk out into the killing cold. But instead of fighting the forest, they studied it. And what they learned began with a decision that sounds backward to us even now. Because when a builder went looking for the bones of a house, he walked past the biggest trees in the forest. The old trunks were strong. Yes, strong and stubborn, and rigid things break. What he wanted were the young ones, hickory and elm, ash and cedar, still slender, still willing to move. Timing mattered as much as the wood itself. Cut in spring, while the sap was still running, a green sapling would bend instead of splinter. A builder tested one the way you test a bowstring. He would bend it slowly and listen. If it whispered, it was ready. If it cracked, the forest had said no. Then the poles went deep into the earth in 2 long rows, and opposing saplings were drawn toward each other until they met overhead, groaning under the tension, while strips of inner bark bound every joint. As those lashings dried, they shrank and pulled tighter. The house grew stronger as it dried. It was built to tighten with time, not to loosen. And what rose from the snow looked like the ribs of some enormous woodland creature light, flexible, and made to move with the wind rather than stand against it. But the skeleton was only the beginning. Its greatest secret was still hidden beneath its skin. A wooden frame alone would never have survived a northern winter, and the people who built it knew that better than anyone. The house needed a second defense, and it came from the elm. Each spring, when the rising sap loosened the bark from the living trunk, skilled hands lifted broad sheets away in wide panels, taking what the tree could give without killing it whenever that was possible. Elm bark is thick, flexible, and naturally shrugs off rain, and once every panel had been pressed flat for weeks beneath heavy logs, it was carried to the frame. They began at the bottom and worked upward, overlapping each sheet like the scales of a fish, so that rain ran downward, snow slid away, and the wind could find almost nothing to get its fingers into. A second layer of slender poles pinned the bark against the ribs. The Longhouse did not fight the storm. It absorbed it. Inside, the heart of the house was never one fire. It was many, spaced carefully along the central aisle, each hearth shared between 2 neighboring families, so that warmth spread the whole length of the building, instead of pooling in one spot. And here is a number worth holding on to. 60 people under one roof burned less wood than 6 families in 6 separate huts. Above every hearth, an opening in the roof worked like a breathing passage, and a bark flap was turned by hand to match the wind, letting smoke climb out while keeping snow and freezing rain from coming in. No machinery, only experience, only observation. That boy learned to read the direction of the wind by watching the smoke bend, long before he learned to read anything else at all. But not all of the smoke was allowed to go. High under the curved roof, a warm grey layer stayed suspended above the living space, reflecting heat back down onto the families below like an invisible ceiling, and holding hundreds of braided ears of corn, beans, herbs, smoked fish, and venison in a haze where insects would not follow and damp could not settle. Modern architects call it passive ventilation and thermal mass. The Haudenosaunee called it home. But warmth and food were only two of the things the smoke was keeping. The third one had no shape at all. Along both sides of that long central aisle ran raised wooden platforms, and they were where a family actually lived. Covered in woven cattail mats, corn husks, deer hide, beaver pelt, and heavy black bear fur, they lifted people off the cold ground and up into the warmer air that naturally gathered a few feet above it. Firewood dried in the dark space underneath before it ever reached the flames, and shelves above held carved bowls, baskets, clay vessels, tools, and medicine. Nothing was wasted, not even the people, because a resting human body gives off heat, and 60 of them under one roof warmed the house without burning a single extra log. The Longhouse was not just a shelter. It was a machine powered by community, and the night the wind came, that machine was tested. The storm hit the bark walls hard enough to shake them. Snow piled against the village until the doorways half disappeared, and inside, the world stayed strangely calm. The hickory ribs bent slightly under the pressure. The basswood lashings pulled tighter. The overlapping panels shifted just enough to swallow each gust and then settled back into place. It flexed, it breathed, it endured. But that boy on the night watch heard the timber groaning above him and was certain the roof was about to come down. And what frightened him most was that not one adult sat up. His grandmother spoke without opening her eyes. "That sound is the house doing its work," she told him. "Be afraid the night it goes silent." The Longhouse did not conquer winter. It simply refused to become its victim. And on nights like that, when the trails were gone and no one could leave, the Great Hall became a school. The elders talked, and the children listened, and knowledge lived in memory and story, and in belts of wampum woven from white and purple shell, every pattern holding a treaty, an alliance, a founding law. Even authority lived under that roof, because the clan mothers held the power to appoint the men who spoke in the Grand Council, and the power to remove them. The Longhouse was the physical blueprint of a nation, and then, at last, the rivers broke open and the spring came. A Longhouse was never meant to stand unchanged, because it was built to live, so every family went over their home the way you would go over a body after a hard illness. Weathered bark was peeled off and replaced with fresh panels, worn lashings were renewed, cracked saplings became firewood, and old bark found a second life as a storage liner or a windbreak. Nothing was discarded without a purpose. And when the soil around the village finally began to tire and the nearby firewood ran thin, they did something that still astonishes people today. They moved. They took apart what could be carried, left the rest, and let the clearing return to forest. Within a single generation, the trees came back, the earth healed, the game returned. Long before the word sustainability existed, they had already lived it. And it was in that spring that the boy asked his grandmother again, "Why do we let the smoke stay?" This time she answered him. "The smoke kept the heat," she said. "The smoke kept the food. And the smoke kept us together, because no one could ever sit alone underneath it. Every other house in the world was built to drive the smoke out. This one held on to it, because the smoke was the one thing in that entire building that touched every single person at exactly the same moment. Look at the whole design and you see it repeated everywhere. Every curved rib borrowed the flexibility of a living tree. Every overlapping sheet of bark copied the layers of the forest floor. Every shared hearth turned separate families into one society. Architects still study those principles now. Passive ventilation, thermal efficiency, renewable material, buildings that answer to their climate instead of fighting it. We have built homes that keep the cold out far better than theirs ever did. We have not yet built one that keeps people together as well. The smartest technology does not always come from machines. Sometimes it grows quietly in a forest, waiting for people wise enough to learn from it. If stories like this one change the way you see the ancient world, stay with us, because there are many more fires still to visit. The fire is out, the house is gone, but the smoke is still teaching, if anyone is still willing to look up.